Kevin Corona of Crookston has now been sentenced to 20 years in prison in a plea deal for the stabbing of his mother in March of 2023. Sentencing also calls for him to pay $3,164 restitution to the Minnesota Crime Victims Fund. For background on all this, here's our report at the time of the incident. Kevin Corona of Crookston has now been formally charged with stabbing his mother. Now in Polk County District Court, Kevin Corona has been charged with 2 counts of attempted murder, premeditated and intentional. Also, 2 counts of assault, first-degree great bodily harm, and second-degree dangerous weapon, plus domestic assault. Reading from the statement of probable cause, quote, on Friday at 4:05 p.m., a Crookston officer dispatched to investigate a possible stabbing in progress. As he turned his patrol car into West 8th Street, a male directed Officer Hanson to 110 West 8th Street. As the officer approached the house, he saw a male, later identified as Corona, leaning over a female, later identified as his mother, was on her back on the ground, and Corona was kneeling down over the victim with both his hands around her neck, pushing down on her. The officer noted Corona and the woman were covered in blood, and there was a knife on the ground next to them. The officer yelled at Corona to get off her as he ran toward them, but Corona continued trying to strangle the victim. The officer tackled Corona and handcuffed him. The officer then tended to the victim, who was saying that she was going to die and she did not want to die. The officer noted the victim's face was covered in blood and there was a laceration above her right eye. There was a deep laceration on her right cheek. There were numerous lacerations to her abdomen area, and there were what appeared to be cuts through her sweater and pants, and there were lacerations to her left hand. Based on training and experience, the officer believed the injuries to the hand were defensive wounds and consistent with the victim's efforts to defend herself against a knife attack. The officer believed that several of the lacerations to the victim's abdomen area were life-threatening, so he applied pressure to as many of the injuries as he could while waiting for emergency personnel to arrive. The officer also noted that the knife had approximately an 8 to 10 inch blade and had blood on it. The victim stated her son, Kevin Corona, attacked her. The officer asked Kevin Corona if he was Kevin. Kevin Corona stated, yeah, and then lunged toward the victim and the officer. Minnesota State Patrol trooper, who had arrived on the scene to assist, got between Corona and the victim and pushed him back. When a Crookston detective arrived on scene, he noted that Corona was soaked in blood and had blood on his face, arms, shirt, and jeans. The detective also noted the victim had what appeared to be at least 5 wounds to her abdomen area. Emergency personnel arrived on scene and attended to the victim. The officer drove the ambulance to Riverview Hospital. Detective rode in the ambulance with the victim. The victim stated she got home from work approximately 3:40 p.m. Corona, who had lived with her since he got out of prison, was mad because she was going to move from one residence to the other. She thought Corona was using a controlled substance that day. Corona stated he was going to hurt her and grabbed a knife from a dish rack, and she ran and tried to get out of the house. So Corona stabbed her, but she did not know how many times. She thought Corona was going to kill her and that she was going to die. She did not want to die. Her stomach hurt, and she thought her neck had been cut. The detective noted the victim did have a laceration on her neck near the collarbone and another one near her armpit. Due to the life-threatening nature of her injuries, the victim was later life-flighted to a hospital in Fargo. Corona has an extensive criminal record going back to 2007, including convictions for assault, drug crimes, disorderly conduct, and criminal damage to property. Again, Corona now sentenced to 20 years in prison under a plea deal with credit for 349 days served. I'm Neil Carlson reporting for iNewZ.TV.